Alright, what is up, guys? How's everybody going? Or how's everything going for everybody for tonight? It's K-Rad here. So, yeah, let's get right into it, man. I want to give my thoughts on Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol fight card. And I will say it was a pretty good fight card. I had like a lot of fun watching the card overall. I felt like that this card could have been a little bit better. And initially, I thought this card was a good fight card. I think in terms of like how everything was, set up with the fights could have been matched up a lot better. In terms of what I liked out of it, I like the fact that this card had a pretty good stacked audience. I think in terms of what the card itself, I'm gonna give like my thoughts on a couple of other cards. Well, like a couple of other fights. Like I'm sorry. I'm gonna probably start off with one of like the bigger fights on the opening card, or the opening fights. It was Caleb Smith going up against Joshua Buatsi, in which this fight was pretty good. I had a lot of fun watching this fight. In terms of who I thought won this fight, I was a little bit skeptical. I felt like Buatsi, he kind of, edged it off a little bit, but to me, I think Caleb Smith did enough to make it seem like he was the better fighter all along. And Buatsi, he's a good fighter, but I just felt like this type of fight, he should have been like the victorious boxer, and he didn't use any of his boxing ability. And I felt like for this type of fight, like for you to be, like the next up and coming guy at the light heavyweight division, he should have been able to beat Caleb Smith a lot easier. And he didn't really step up to that plate. And I want to just say it's probably just due to him not being tested hard enough, and he's not really like, facilitating a good style to be competitive at 175. But in my honest opinion, Caleb Smith, he's a good fighter, but I want to say he's pretty much like a shot fighter at this point, because like to me personally, like the damage that he's taken from like the Canelo Alvarez fight, I want to say that has done like a huge number on him. And I think everything that he's gone through within his career has pretty much showcased that he doesn't really have it anymore. Like, granted, if you were probably talking like about maybe like, I'll say like maybe 8 years ago, Caleb Smith was really, really good. And don't get it twisted, he has his flaws, but it's like certain like aging points of a fighter's career does matter, especially like when you're 27 or 21 or at least 30 years old. Like that matters for like a fighter's longevity in terms of like where they're gonna go. And I think for this fight, Joshua Buatsi was supposed to be the better fighter coming into this fight, and he just didn't use his fundamentals enough. I felt like he just kind of went in there, he wasn't being smart, and then he just allowed Caleb Smith to just tee off on him. And then certain points about the fight, Buatsi, he got some really good power shots off of Caleb, in which I thought Caleb, he could have been knocked out, but Caleb, he has like a really good chin. But it's just like, dude, like certain fighters need to have like proper IQ in order to be like victorious as a world champion. And I think Buatsi is at that level where he's just like he's very flawed with like not having to be completely locked in and staying switched on in order for him to be successful. And I think like for what I've seen with his performance, like I don't think he's gonna get up there at the world title level. I think he's very inaccurate with his fighting strategy, and he likes to go in there trying to just throw a lot of like power shots, and he just stays right in front of you. He doesn't move around, he doesn't use his jab, and he doesn't move his head either. Like he doesn't keep anything defensively, like defensively maneuvered to keep himself, completely focused on the fight to see what's coming in front of him. Because if you do look back at like previous fights leading up to this fight, he was never much of a mover at all. And I think the reason why is simply because like he's just been fighting a lot of low level opposition. And once he stepped up at the competition, you started to see him do a little bit better, but it's not like he's like getting any better because he's been so used to fighting guys that just stay right in front of him. And I think with him fighting Caleb Smith, pretty much showed that his level has never been expanded because he hasn't been, given the tougher level fights earlier in his career. And I would like personally with me, like I would put the blame on Matchroom because for people that don't know who I am, I've been saying for quite the longest that Matchroom has been treating fighters pretty like top rankish in a way where they'll give you like a lot of like low level fights, and then what they'll end up doing is that when you're ready for like a title, they'll match you up with somebody for like a vacant belt, and then when they go out of their way to do that, they will usually end up giving you like the better opportunity to win the belt. But once they like match you up with like tougher names and like you've already been comfortable fighting weaker opponents, you'll just go out of like your way to just be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just take this guy and just basically move on with it, without even like looking at how good this like opponent can potentially be. And then sooner than later, they just end up getting clipped off. But I just find it crazy, man. Like, it's just like personally for me, like I've never respected DAZN with Matchroom, and I think DAZN needs to do better with putting out better fights. But I mean, shout out to Turkey Al Sheikh. He's a really good influencer in the sport in terms of his investment. Hey, how's it going, Rise Tide? Thank you for coming through. Salute K-Rod in chat. Yep, I appreciate you. Right Side said he's a domestic level fighter now. Yeah, I mean, personally with me, man, how I see it is I've never appreciated fighters that take the easy route with trying to take the elevator in boxing. And personally for me, like how I technically break that down is like, if you look at like a guy like Tim Tszyu was never supposed to be a fighter that everybody was going to be like super hyped up on. But the reason why he was ever put at his level is just simply due to political, I would say like political connection per se, and obviously him being tied with with his father. But it's like, if you like translate that into any other fighter that doesn't have a name, but yet they are good fighters, and it's more like those fighters are working hard to keep their spot and they're trying to be successful. They're not being given their opportunities faster enough because they have to go through the gauntlet versus fighters that don't have to go through the gauntlet, and then they could just take easy route fights, and then once they get their opportunity, then the sanctioned bodies favor them over the fighters that that should be getting those bigger level names on their resume. And like basically like it's like a political cycle that that I'm basically stating that certain fighters get because the fighters that don't deserve to be there at the top, they're getting the opportunities to shine a lot quicker, but they're not even good to actually prove it, and yet they're given way more opportunities to get the easier level oppositional fights to be ranked a lot faster and to proceed to like a world title versus fighters that have to work a lot harder to get to that level, and then they end up getting screwed over because it's like no matter how hard that you do work, you end up being put in a position where you have to go through the gauntlet to go through a lot more challenges. But yeah, now that I've hashed that out with Joshua Buatski, let me talk about the other fights that were on this card. I'm going to talk about Ajit Kabayel defeating Zeli Zhang at the heavyweight division, which was a really, really good fight. I personally thought that Zhang was going to potentially beat Kabayel simply because he just had the better power and the pressure. But Kabayel, he's a very, very good boxer, and he has extremely good technicality where he can turn the fight around in his favor. And what I do like about Kabayel is that he never gives up with trying to switch up a different strategy, and he just has great perseverance in the later rounds where he pushes a lot of pressure back to you once you've already used your best tools up against him. So that's one thing that I do like about him. He's a very, very good fighter, and he proved that with Zhang. I thought Zhang was going to beat him initially, but Zhang, he did his thing, and he just got beat. Cabiel, he's a good fighter himself, and he just shined. That's like personally with me, that's what I liked out of that particular fight alone. It was highly competitive. It was very fun to watch, and I definitely had a good time, enjoying that fight. But in terms of where I see who's going to be next in their coming fights, I think Cabello, he's probably going to be given his opportunity to go ahead and fight. I want to say maybe for a interim level position. I want to say with Zhang, actually, I'm sorry. This fight was already for a interim level position for I want to say the WBC or the IBF. I forgot, but basically, but the winner of this fight will be lined up to be called for a mandatory for any of the sanctioning bodies that they fought for Usyk's belts. So I want to say either that or Danny Dubois. Like, I'm sorry, but either way, like, I'm actually happy that this happened because now, once I do talk about Joseph Parker in a minute, I think this is a very, very good opportunity. I think it's good that this happened because if it didn't happen, I think initially, I think initially that the winner of either of these two would have had been, held back a little bit longer. And I don't think where things have been put in place, it wouldn't have been fair for either of them to have to wait longer to get their opportunity. So, I mean, personally, I'm not mad at it. I'm personally fine with, how, everything got put in place. And now that I'm looking at it right now, this was for the interim WBC title. So, yeah, but the winner gets Usyk. So I guess they'll be the mandatory if they're ever to be summoned for the mandatory position. But I think Usyk, he's going to end up probably facing, I don't know, I want to see him face Danny Dubois. I think the rematch with Dubois makes sense. If he does that, then that'll be good for him. And then after that, that'll pretty much end up being, the end of the heavyweight division with Usyk. And I think Usyk, he should just hang it up, man. I don't mind, seeing him get the rematch with Danny Dubois. If anything, Dubois is a very good, tough fight for him. And the issue is that if Usyk ends up, making the same mistakes that he did up against Danny Dubois by leaving himself open to the body, I think Dubois can very well knock him out. And I think that's going to make the rematch far more interesting. But I guess, if anything, we have to wait to see what Dubois is going to be, heading himself into in the future. Because if anything, I don't know what will happen for Joseph Parker, but I will get to him in a minute. I'm going to talk about the next fight up on this card with Virgil versus Israel Madrimov. But I will say, in terms of where things are going, I think personally it would be good to see, Dubois versus Usyk for unification, and maybe see Joseph Parker get that opportunity for the winner. But I'm going to talk about that later after I talk about Virgil. So, yeah, let me talk about Virgil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov. The thing about this fight was that I thought Virgil Ortiz did a good job. He got pieced up really, really bad in the early rounds. And I thought leading up till round 5, that's when Virgil Ortiz started to turn it up. And then he ended up figuring out Israel very quickly. If anything, I think Virgil Ortiz pretty much proved that he knows how to get rid of the jab up against a good boxer puncher. But he needs to move his head more. That's the problem with Virgil. I think Virgil has shown himself to be extremely vulnerable, up against, pure boxer punchers. And I think, to me, if that was a fighter like Jerome Boots Ennis or any other fighter that knows how to box and land accurate shots to hurt Virgil and knock him out, I think Virgil would have been in major trouble to be TKO'd, because Israel Majamov, he's a very, very good fighter. I feel like his experience has now started to peak as a seasoned veteran, because, like, to me personally, I thought he beat Terrence Crawford in his last fight leading up to this point, and I think it would have been better if Virgil had basically fought. I don't know. I feel like Crawford should have been, like the individual to just step up and fight Virgil Ortiz to just get that fight out the way, and then Sergey Boachuk and Israel Majamov can fight each other for a mandatory title position. So I just think in terms of how that goes, that would be pretty good, and I think that's how everything should be prioritized. I think how everything is to be set up right now, I just don't think that's really fair per se, where Israel, he basically had to go through, I guess, like the harder humps, but I don't personally mind it. It's just like, for me, I think it's good that Virgil, he's getting these big fights out the way. So I mean, it's not bad per se, but it's like it could be way better. So I don't know, man. I think Virgil Ortiz, he could very well shake up like the 154-pound division, and I think it's good that he did fight Israel, but I think, like, as far as 154 goes for the rest of the division, it would have been better if he had fought maybe, I don't know. I wanted to possibly see him and Tim Tszyu, because initially, for those of you that don't know, Virgil Ortiz was supposed to fight Tim Tszyu, if I'm not mistaken, and Tim Tszyu was supposed to be that next fight lined up after he had lost to Fundora, but I guess that's where him and Bakram Murtazaliev was lined up to fight each other, and then from that point on, that's where Virgil was like, okay, let me just go ahead and fight Israel Majamov to defend the WBC interim title, because after he had defeated Sergey Boachuk, he just figured like, okay, well, this just makes perfect sense, because Majamov will just be like another good win, and then on top of that, it just promotes like the name drawn between him and Terrence Crawford. So I think Virgil Ortiz just understands, like, okay, like Majamov was like a controversial fight for Crawford, but with Virgil beating Majamov, it just makes better sense, because stylistically, it just makes like the fight promotion better if Crawford wanted to fight Virgil. But either way, I don't think, if anything, Virgil Ortiz is ducking Crawford. Like, I don't really think Crawford, if anything, really wanted to fight him. But I'm not really going to talk like about that. I just think Virgil, he's showing that he wants to become a world champion. He wants to fight, the best, and Crawford is trying everything in his power to, be the best himself. But Virgil, he's putting in a lot of work to, signify, his true value as a fighter. So, I don't blame Virgil for what he's doing, but I think, if anything, if I was in my position to, to be successful, I'm going to go, where the work is at, so I can be successful in my own, path to get to where I need to be. So, I think that's the problem. I think Virgil Ortiz, he was trying to get to a point where he could become a champion right away. But I think the work that he put in, he has a good stacked resume, but I feel like that, there could have been some political maneuvering, where he hasn't really put himself in any position to be successful. And I think it's really disingenuous where Oscar De La Hoya has kind of been, holding everything back, with Virgil Ortiz, where Ortiz is kind of like taking the elevator, a little bit, but he's doing some heavy lifting by taking the stairs, where if he needs to fight a tough name, then he'll do it. But I'm just hoping, like, Virgil doesn't become like a duck if he ever becomes like a world champion, because I want to see Virgil fight everybody, and I feel like he will. So I think like Virgil is now seeing his true potential as a fighter. But if I was Virgil Ortiz, I should just go ahead and just fight everybody, because it just makes you more valuable as a fighter, in my honest opinion. So yeah, either way, it was a good victory, man. He's done everything well, and yeah, I think Virgil Ortiz has scaled as a good fighter. Now, do I think he's going to become a world champion at 154? That's a little bit questionable. I think Virgil Ortiz, he definitely has like a lot of heavy lifting to do, but I don't think Virgil is like, how should I say, like, incapable of not winning a title. I think with all the training that he's gone through with Robert Garcia, I think Robert Garcia has put himself in a far greater position to put Virgil Ortiz in a good spot. So I think it's good to see Virgil Ortiz put himself at a high level. And yeah, I don't know. I think Virgil is in a right path, and I could very well be wrong, but I don't know. I think Virgil Ortiz will have a very good scaling at the 154-pound division if he is able to keep himself disciplined, and I think he's at that level. I don't think Virgil is far away from becoming a world champion. So I think 154, he's definitely going to be like a player at 154. So he's mad young. He's definitely healed a lot better from that organ incident with the rhabdomyolysis incident, where he was trying to kill himself to make 147. So I'm hoping that doesn't haunt him again. So he's doing a very, very good job. So he's 26 years old. So I'm hoping that he's still able to keep himself healthy, and he doesn't have to go through that crazy nonsense. So either way, good job. I'm happy for Virgil. And hopefully Virgil Ortiz, he can continue to do bigger and better things for the future. So, all right, next fight up on this card, we have Hamza Shiraz getting a majority decision with Dominican Republic's own, aka Quisqueya, Carlos Adames at 160 in the middleweight division for the WBC middleweight championship. I personally thought with this fight that this fight could have been a lot better if Carlos Adames had jabbed, and I felt like with this particular performance, it just would have been better if Adames had put himself in a much better position to make this fight more competitive to jab. And Hamza Shiraz, he was supposed to win this fight, and apparently he just, I don't know, man. I just think in terms of where everything is with his career, I just don't understand why he just didn't jab. I felt like he just kind of, shrugged everything off. And, he just wasn't doing his job initially to be, defensively switched on, keep his jab accurate and active. And, he could have done a lot better by trying to, reflex his footwork. So therefore, every time he's coming in with like a shot, he has like the fight controlled in his foot placement, where he's able to control Carlos Adames' shots coming in. And unfortunately, he was just keeping his head, lined up at the center. He wasn't moving his head too much, so he ended up getting pieced up a little bit. But I will say, he has a really, really good. He has a really, really good chin, so he's definitely a very good inside fighter in terms of he can take a good shot to make a good shot. So, I mean, I think it's good that he's doing that. And yeah, I like everything out of him, man. So I think he just needs to work on a lot of fundamental technique. I think this performance was just like a hiccup performance because I want to say personally with me, he just felt like he thought he could be there at the big level, and good enough he made it to that level, but I think he just got shook due to maybe the pressure got to him. And I want to say maybe that's something that's common within like a lot of fighters. Like, you're so excited, but then once you get out there, you're not performing at your level because one, you haven't seen it like you haven't seen that type of scenery before. But two, the amount of pressure that you're having to take mentally from those shots when everybody's taking a look at you, at the biggest stage of your career, that's something where not a lot of fighters want to do. So I think that's what Hamza Shiraz went through. He went through a lot of adversity without the fans, and I think that's what caused him to not be at that level. So I think if anything, he'll be a lot better in the coming fights. So I don't think he's out of, he's not like, I don't think he's a bad fighter. I think if anything, he's doing everything correctly to grow as a fighter. And if it means that he needs to be a little bit more, assertive with how to improve better, then I think that's a perfect, I think it's a good strategy for him to just go back to the drawing board, get better with like what you did wrong or what you could have done better with what you did good, and after that, just go ahead and just call it finished. After that, I don't think he needs to prove anything, and I think if anything, he's just doing everything properly as a fighter, where he's trying his best, and unfortunately, he just had that hiccup. So I think if anything, it's not really like a loss for him because he didn't just give up. He didn't just like basically fold and be like, oh well, let me just like get out of here and let me just get knocked out because I don't want to put in let the hard working effort that I worked my butt off for to get a world title. So I'm just going to just get folded and just say, yeah, like I'd rather get knocked out and just say, yeah, like I'm done with boxing. Like no, like he actually gave it his shot, but he just didn't perform because he had like a particular hiccup that held him back. So I think mentally he just needs to get himself into like the war mode of thinking, where once he goes through those mental challenges, I think he's going to be fine. He definitely has heart. It's not like he's a quitter. So I think that's something that not a lot of fighters will ever have, in the sport. But when you do work your butt off to be the best of what you can do, then you just end up being far more successful. And then boom, you're able to make it. Yeah, like you're able to make it to the top. And no matter how many wins or losses you have, if you're able to push that to yourself to say that nobody can stop me, and then you put yourself in a much greater position to be successful, then to me anything is possible. Like what that one NBA player, Kevin Garnett always says, anything is possible. So in my motto, anything's possible in life, and you should never give up on any goals that you have. All right, let's talk about the next fight up on this card. We have Mr. Shakur Stevenson defeating Josh Padley, late minute or last minute replacement that came in. And yeah, he stopped him in 9 rounds. And I have to say, this is a good performance. I don't really have much to really say other than, Shakur, he did good. He at least stayed active, so I'm not mad at it. Shakur Stevenson, to me, he's in a really, really good position of his career. So, he was supposed to fight Floyd Schofield, and unfortunately, that crazy drama happened. So, initially, he was supposed to come back in October, up against Joe Cordina, which that was supposed to be, I want to say the Bivol. Yeah, that was Bivol versus Beterbiev, the first fight. So that was supposed to happen, and I think Shakur he broke his hand or Joe Cordina broke his hand. So either way, he managed to kind of go ahead and just push it off for him to get the Floyd Schofield fight, which then got canceled into turning into the Josh Padley replacement fight. So personally with me, he did a good job. So definitely like to see him unify with Gervonta Davis. I'm hoping that fight could happen. I don't think Tank is ever going to fight, Devin Haney. So I think Shakur, he should go ahead and fight Tank while Tank is still fresh and he's wanting to leave the sport. So I think Shakur Stevenson versus Gervonta Davis is definitely on the horizon. And I think, in my honest opinion, um, William Zepeda, who could be his WBC mandatory, he holds the WBC interim title. So, to me personally, I think Zepeda, he's going to go ahead and, end up fighting Shakur if he's able to beat Tevin Farmer in a rematch, which I don't think that's probably a fight he's going to manage to win again. But if he manages to beat Tevin, which I don't think so, I'm hoping Tevin can beat him. But this fight's going to be in Mexico for their scheduled rematch on March 9th of this year. But yeah, I just think where everything's at right now, it's going to be pretty difficult. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think Shakur Stevenson, he's going to end up fighting William Zepeda or Tevin Farmer winner. And then Gervonta Davis, he's going to obviously end up fighting Lamont Roach for his next fight. And then after that fight's over with, then I truly believe that Tank Davis is going to end up fighting Floyd Schofield, because Floyd, he's going to end up being number one in the WBA, and I think the WBA is going to mandate that fight, and then Tank is going to just take it, and then he's going to be like, okay, I'm fighting my mandatory. He's going to brutally knock out Floyd. That's how I see it. I think Floyd's going to get sacrificed, but if it is possible, I think Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Tank Davis will see each other as a big fight for a unification. And I think Turkey Ali Sheik will definitely get involved, because if Gervonta Tank Davis is going to be a coward to not fight Devin Haney, I truly believe that he will fight Shakur Stevenson, because I truly think that where Shakur's at right now, mentally and physically, I don't think Tank is overlooking that. And I think Gervonta should take advantage in beating Shakur, because I want to say Shakur, he is at a level of which he is vulnerable. So the reason why I say this is because Shakur Stevenson, unfortunately, broke his hand in the Josh Padley fight. Now, what ended up happening in this fight was that Joshua Padley, he didn't do anything, on his end, but he ended up pressuring Shakur to the point where Shakur, he was trying to throw back at him, and then I want to say during the fight, Shakur ended up breaking his hand, where he had surgery on it, previously, as far as a recent occurrence, and I want to say one of his hands that that he ended up getting injured again in the fight, because he recently had surgery on either of them. So during that occurrence, I want to say his hand ended up getting swollen, and then I want to say it ended up getting worse throughout with the fight. So either way, I think Shakur Stevenson, he is vulnerable with his hand getting injured, because if that does play a factor into Gervonta Davis with a unification fight, then I think Shakur Stevenson could potentially get knocked out, because yes, he is defensively gifted. He knows exactly what he needs to do to be successful. But I think if anything, Shakur Stevenson will end up getting taken out in the sense where Gervonta Davis will figure him out sooner than later, and then if Shakur manages to get exposed, so then Gervonta Davis, he could very well knock him out. So either way, yeah, I guess we'll find out to see what will happen, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where things will go. So yeah, that's pretty much my whole thoughts on that. So yeah, let's talk about the co-main and the main event. We got Joseph Parker knocking out Martin Bacoli in the second round. I thought this was a beautiful fight, and I thought Joseph Parker ended up doing his thing. Martin Bacoli was supposed to fight F.A. Jabba, but he took this fight on short notice. And I have to say, Parker, he did his thing. I kind of wish that this fight was a little bit more competitive because I felt like Bacoli, he just came out of bed and he didn't look like he was in shape. He just kind of made this fight a very one-sided fight. And I mean, Parker, he didn't really do much of anything, but I mean, for him to just be that strong and that gifted to kind of just do anything like that to knock out Bacoli, I mean, it just pretty much shows that certain fighters like Bacoli shouldn't be hyped up to to the point where they can be a big valuable name, instantly after being a known, heavyweight fighter on the come up like a Jared Big Baby Anderson. So I mean, either way, Bacoli, he's a good talent, man. It's just that the problem with him was that his defense was never to be that good, and he doesn't have good reflex game. So I've kind of always thought of him to be kind of like a wild card because sometimes he'll do good, other times he'll do very bad. So I mean, to me, I wouldn't be putting my money on him, and I just don't. I don't like the fact of how he, trains defensively with how he prepares for fights. So I think that's the biggest problem with Martin Bacoli. He just has a really bad, undisciplined fighting style that puts him in danger for a lot of potential losses. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that. All right, let's talk about the main event. This is what y'all are here for. Dmitry Bivol defeating Artur Beterbiev in a rematch. Personally, with me, I thought Artur Beterbiev did a very, very good job in the middle to late rounds. I thought Bivol, he did extremely well early. And I thought Beterbiev, he made the fight very close in the early rounds, but in the late rounds, I thought Beterbiev definitely took it by storm. But it wasn't easy because there was a lot of swing rounds, so I'm not too sure where the judging would have standed on it if the fight was scored a little bit better without the punch stats. But yeah, I thought Beterbiev won, but it wasn't by a huge margin. I had it 7-5 Beterbiev by split decision, and I could be biased to say Beterbiev won 8-4, but I will just be honest to say objectively, I felt like that this fight could have been a 7-5 victory in Artur Beterbiev, so I do believe in that. But either way, Bivol did his thing. And I'm not mad that Bivol had won because I feel like that this fight, makes it more interesting for a third fight. And I personally like to see it. So I don't know where things will go for Beterbiev, but I think Beterbiev, getting that opportunity to be at the very top level with a guy like, Dmitry Bivol, that's good for the sport. So either way, congrats to both guys. I'm happy that Bivol shocked the world. People were favoring him to a certain degree, but I wasn't really favoring him. I thought Bivol was the underdog, so I thought Beterbiev was going to be a far more tougher test for Bivol rather than you know, um, yeah, like rather than Bivol being a tougher test for Beterbiev or vice versa. So yeah, um, yeah. Once that's pretty much it, man. I just wanted to give like my thoughts on this because I felt like it was probably due for me to just make something like this to talk about both of these guys. So either way, huge shout out to Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. I like watching them both, so I'm a huge fan for both of their career legacies. So yeah, congratulations, and yeah, guys. Until we meet again, I got more content coming out for y'all. Definitely coming out with more gaming content with the commentary. So definitely stay tuned for that. Once I get like my PS5 and all that, definitely need to get back into like my grind with Call of Duty, um, definitely Marvel Rivals and all that. So I got a lot of stuff coming to the channel. So either way, thank you very much. Hit the like button, do what you got to do, and yeah, that's pretty much it, man. You know, I'll be eventually trying to get like my channel to being monetized in the future, but yeah, I think everything's pretty much straight. So I just need to, keep pushing away. So all right, I will see you guys later. Peace out, and here is the outro for y'all. I will see you guys. Peace. All right, you find the outro. Give me a second. All right, here we go.